Hello and welcome. Welcome to the stream. My name is Ghost. You can find me at Art Ghosts online, and my cat is going to be knocking stuff off the table as usual. But yeah, I'm on Blue Sky, I'm on Patreon and Coffee. I post on YouTube, I post on Spectra.Video, which is part of PeerTube. It's kind of like Mastodon, and I'm on that as well. All of my handles you can see on the bottom right here. Just getting my YouTube chat updated. There we go. Let me put my link in there. So I usually do a game stream on Tuesdays. I play a variety of different games. And today I was not feeling it. I mean, aside from Baldur's Gate 3, I've been playing tons of Baldur's Gate 3. But I'm in the middle of the Underdark right now, so I don't think that would be very interesting to just jump into that, because that's all I want to play right now. So I'm going to be messing more with Moho animation, Moho 12 specifically. Yeah, Moho 12. Moho 12 Pro. So it does have some features that involve 3D and particle effects and smart features. I don't know what is pro and what's not. I'm following a Moho 14 tutorial, so I'm like working my way around some things that don't exist yet in this program. But let me get us over to Moho. So if you didn't know, I also do have commissions open right now, as you can see in the banner above. I also do have a GoFundMe for my cat Nala, who I mentioned earlier. She's got a grade 2 heart murmur, so she needs a cardiology appointment, follow-up, and some dental work following that, as long as her heart's okay to be put under for that. So I have to save some money, and if you support me on Patreon or Coffee, it'll be a great help towards saving for that. Anyway, I've got a little bit of music playing in the background from Blue Turtle from their game Magic Studies. Check it out on Steam. Very nice productivity tool and notebook sort of thing. But I'm also going to be listening to these tutorial videos. So I'm going to be messing with the audio quite a bit. Let me turn this down just so it's in the way background. And last time we went through 10 parts of this tutorial, going over the interface, basic layer structures, timeline basics, exporting an animation, preparing a Photoshop document, importing the Photoshop document and doing basic rigging, switch layers, which I was just messing with on here, target bones, which I have made, basic smart warp. God, was I struggling with that. So if you somehow made it through that part of the stream, I commend you. I almost gave up. But what I was doing was making this mesh on this head, and there's smart features to do it automatically in Moho 14. And I don't know if I liked how it looked. So I manually did it and made all these little triangles. So with that, you actually can... Whoops. Let's go into the head here. Head mesh. We can adjust points in some capacity. This is just adjust the points of the mesh. So I still don't know how to connect the mesh to the drawing. That's what I'm struggling with here, I think. So I'm just going to continue going through tutorials here.
A non-destructive way. We can use a mesh to, for instance, adjust the way the head looks for this character, even though it's a bitmap. Traditionally, we can't really do much beyond bind it to some bones and do some other basic things like that in terms of design. But with a mesh, you can actually mold and deform and change and animate this head or any part of the character any way you see fit.
And I don't know if I'd actually use this technique
for
much.
bitmap characters. It can be used for vector-based characters as well. So with that, we're going to have Moho create a mesh for our head. And we can come over here to the head layer. And with that selected,
so this is in Moho 14.
I'm going to come up here to draw.
So it doesn't do
and then
this
choose
in Moho 12.
Create Mesh Layer. And actually, let's come back here really quick. And I'm going to remove all the animation from that bone layer, just so this is easier to see. So I'm just on that bone layer. I'm going to click and drag over these keyframes and then just hit delete. And then we can come back here to the head warp layer and go past frame 0. And I'm just going to click on the transform points tool right up here and start to move things around. And as you can see, I'm able to manipulate the bitmap. And I can even animate this. So if I go to frame 24 and I extend this out, you can see that it's actually being animated. And so what you can end up doing is hiding the mesh, and then you'll just see what's occurring with the character. But here's something else to keep in mind. Let's say we want to create a head turn. Well, we can start the process of move.
So I'm actually going to look up Moho 12 mesh. Moho 12 Pro mesh. Smart warp with images.
The Smart Warp feature allows you to alter and animate your images not previously possible in Moho and Anime Studio. You can draw meshes around any image, giving you complete control over what moves and what doesn't. In this example, we are using an awful image of me. Well, I hope it doesn't scare you. I'm not quite sure why we settled on this image, but, well, it'll work. Layer for your mesh. This will be a vector layer. So we'll come over here, make a new vector. We can name it mesh and make sure it's placed above the image. For your mesh, you'll want to cover the entire image. So it's best to create the points surrounding the image first, or in this case, our hideous head. So we're going to grab the add point tool and come in here and just start.
So I went and used the add point tool
just to get some groundwork here.
And added in these points around the head.
Go back through now and add additional points to help shape the mesh around the head. You can add as many points as you need. We're going to try to keep things symmetrical here, as it works best when you're trying to alter your results with the mesh. So we'll make sure we cover the hair. The next step is to select the Create Shape tool, and you'll want to select the entire mesh making up this image. So we'll just select the entire thing, and then we'll hit Create Shape to create a shape for the mesh. Now, before we continue, we're just going to hide the mesh and come back and add some more points, because we want to add more points so we can alter the face in different ways. So we'll start down here, and we'll start with the bottom lip. We'll fill things in. There we go. Got some points for the chin.
I'm just going to skip through some of this because I did
and
this
some
part.
Of these sure. There we go. Is create the mesh and choose triangulate 2D mesh.
So I did that already.
What this will do is create the mesh so we can see all the points in place. If you toggle the visibility of the mesh, you can see the triangle shapes on the face. From here, if you want, you can go through and check this out, but it's not going to do much yet. You can grab points and move them around if you wish. If we just come over here and let's just try to grab one and even animate it, and you can see it's not doing anything to the face. That's because we need to go into this layer and set up the mesh. So let's double click on the Chad layer, or you can just click on the layer settings button, go into images, down to smart warp layer, and choose mesh.
Okay, so this, we do it for all these layers here. So we want them all visible. Ears, ears, head. Okay. Image, smart warp, head mesh. Okay.
Once you're good, click OK or hit enter. You'll now be able to come in here and alter this mesh using your points. You can see now it's all cut out, and we can go in now and we could create eye blinks or even mouth movements. So you can see right here, we can go in and alter these points in pretty intricate detail. So we can come down here and make our mouth movements and do whatever.
Hold on.
Mesh. So let's double click on the Chad layer, or you can just click on the layer settings button.
Head, image, smart warp layer, head mesh. Okay.
Go into images, down to smart warp layer, and choose mesh.
Okay, I did that.
Once you're good, click OK or hit enter. You'll now be able to come in here and alter this mesh using your points. You can see now it's all cut out, and we can go in now and we could create eye blinks or even mouth movements. So you can see right here, we can go in and alter these points in pretty intricate detail. So we can come down here and make our mouth movements and do whatever we want. Using the face as an example, you can make alterations to
Where'd
the
the
mouth
ears go?
very easily. You can drop the jaw. You can move your points around to shrink things in. You can also go into the face with those lines we had before and make
Let's
further
reopen
alterations.
this.
All while not worrying about other things such as
That's
your
really
hair from
ugly.
being
So
altered,
I'm gonna
because
close that out.
everything has been isolated with the points we placed down in the back.
Open copper
So you have
animation
a lot
test
of control
2.
over what's being moved and what's not. You can add eye blinks as well
I'm
as
gonna
eyebrow movements
delete
and anything else that you can
the
think
head
of.
mesh.
Bones can also be integrated with the mesh.
Eyelids,
to
I gotta
create
remake
even
this.
more advanced
I don't have
animation
to remake the
results.
switch layer.
The Smart Warp feature in Moho.
Okay. So what we have to do is go above the head layer, create a vector layer, head mesh, and set up our points. I'm going to use my tablet to do this. Let me close this in case anybody decides they want to chat a little bit. So let's set up our points here. So add a point. I'm just going to start adding a bunch of points here, clicking and dragging. And I'm not going to get the ears involved in this. I'm just doing the head. So after we add the points, then it's gonna be setting up the mesh. I don't want to autofill. Do want to auto weld. Okay. So I did that. Create shape. Enter.
Is to select the Create Shape tool, and you'll want to select the entire mesh making up this image. So we'll just select the entire thing, and then we'll hit Create Shape to create a shape for the mesh.
Hold on, that didn't work. Okay. Create shape. Select edges to define a shape. Click enter. Create shape. I didn't do anything.
Now, before we continue,
Oh, okay.
we're just going to hide the mesh and come back and add some more points, because we want to add more points so we can alter the face in different ways.
Hide the mesh.
So we'll start down here, and we'll start with the bottom lip. We're just
Okay. Add more points. So we're gonna be I'm gonna add some lines around this mouth area and the nose. Gotta get just a little bit of detail so that if one thing moves, more of the image will move along with it. I got a little click there showing it auto welded. There we go. So we did the mouth. I'm gonna do around the eye. Little eyebrows. These cheeks. Okay. Now what's the next step?
let's add some lines and move. So we'll this just to make sure, and choose Triangulate 2D Mesh. What this will do is create the mesh so we can see all the points in place. If you toggle the visibility of the mesh, you can see the triangle shapes on the face. From here, if you want, you can go through and check this out, but it's not going to do much yet. You can grab points and move them around if you wish. We just come over here and let's just try to grab one and even animate it.
Yeah, so it's not connected to the drawing yet.
That's because we need to go into this layer and set up the mesh. So let's double click on the Chad layer. Moving this head, but as you can see, when we get to a certain point where we have the eyes, we're no longer able to do that. So we can help Moho out by adding some points to this mesh. We're just going to go back here to frame 0, and we're going to grab the add point tool.
So this is what I just did.
Now you'd probably want to be more strategic with the round. Can be some detail, and we come in and we start to move things around. You can see now with these points, we have the to the bone layer. I can do to the modify this further. So if we wanted to create that head turn now, we definitely could. And also, as I'm manipulating things, you can also continue to animate in different ways. So now another thing to note too, as you are building up your mesh, and I'm just going to come over here back to the warp here and remove what I did here because it's not really that pleasing to look at since I was just playing around with it. What we can do is test this out with an animation, and I'm just going to come up over here to that mesh is tied to a layer. As an example, is test this out with an animation, and I'm just going to come up over here to the bone layer once again, and we're going to create some bone animation. And if I were to, as an example, move the head, you can see that we're having an issue where the mask is not following the head, and it just does not look right. So when you create a mesh, it's very important that that mesh is tied to a layer that makes sense. And in this case, it's going to be the head layer. So we want to layer bind the warp to the head. So that way, when he moves his head, the mesh will move along with it. It's kind of like how we set up the pupils with that pupil bone. And just one more trick, when you are working with multiple layers like we are here, you might find it best to take that warp layer and bring it above all of your other layers. So if I place it right above eyelids here, it might be easier to work with then. So that way you can see all of the points and lines.
Two different.
Just click on the layer settings button, go into images, down to smart warp layer.
Images, smart warp layer, head mesh. Okay.
And choose mesh. Once you're good, click OK or hit enter. You'll now be able to come in here and alter this mesh using your points. You can see now it's all cut out, and we can go in now and we could create eye blinks or even mouth movements. So you can see right here, we can go in and alter these points in pretty intricate detail. So we can come down here and make our mouth movements and do whatever we want. Using the face as an example, you can make alterations to the mouth very easily. You can drop the jaw. You can move your points around to shrink things in. You can also go into the face with those lines we added before and make further alterations.
There we go.
All while not worrying about other things such as your hair from being altered, because everything has been isolated with the points we placed down for that. So you have a lot of control over what's being moved and what's not. You can add eye blinks as well as eyebrow movements and anything else that you can think of. Bones can also be integrated with the mesh to create even more advanced animation results. The Smart Warp feature in Moho Pro 12 is incredibly powerful. It not only opens up new using the face, you'll now be able to come in here and alter this mesh using your points. You can see now it's all cut out, and we can go in now and we
I don't like that it shows the color in here. How do I change that?
create eye blinks or From here, if you want, you can go through and check this out, but it's not going to do much yet, anything to the face. That's because we need to go into this layer and set up the mesh. So let's double click on the Chad layer, or you can just click on the layer settings button, go into images, down to Smart Warp Layer, and choose Mesh. Once you're good, click OK or hit Enter. You'll now be able to come in here and alter this mesh using your points. You can see now it's all cut out, and we can go in now and we could create eye blinks or even mouth movements. So you can see right here, we can go in and alter these points in pretty intricate detail. So we can come down here and make our mouth movements.
Okay, now I got it.
Using the face as an example, you can make alterations to the mouth very easily. You can drop the jaw. You can move your points around because add eye blinks as well as eyebrow movements and anything else. The Smart Warp feature in Moho Pro 12 is incredibly powerful. It now...
Okay, so I got through that tutorial.
Because I noticed before that my eyes were covering up some of the
one.
lines during the animation, so it might be harder to take a look at that. But with that now, you can have it at the top, you can move around, you can manipulate what you need to manipulate. This, if you wanted to create working here, being manipulated.
Okay, so what I want to do here is kind of nod the head, right? Let's go into the bone layer. Oh. Let's change the visibility. Let's go into the bone head mesh. Okay. So the mesh didn't really move along with it. Huh. Nodding the head off. Just gonna nudge it a little bit. Okay. Edit, draw, animation. I want to reset it. I'm going to cycle it. Let's see if that does what I want it to do. Nope. Let's try add keyframe. Bone layer. I got a nod. Right click, add another keyframe. Cycle from 0. Yeah, see, the warp is not something I think I will use because I just don't like how it looks. It looks pretty janky, warping it like that, and I can't get it to stick to the head layer. Okay. Sorry, that was loud.
Great feature to use. And in the case of copper, we will be using the tail. So let's come down here to the bottom of the layer list, and we can toggle the visibility of the tail. And let's also make sure the tail is layer bound to the pelvis. So just like that, we now have the tail attached to the rig.
Layer bound to the pelvis. Okay, so I need to take the bones out of this because we're doing something else with it, maybe. This is in 14 again, so I don't know if it's actually gonna work. Delete those. Let's go down to the tail. Bind layer to the pelvis. Okay.
Next, let's add the curver. So with tail still selected and we're on frame 0, let's go up to Draw, and then come down to Create Curver Layer. Here, you'll see that we create what appears to be a smart warp mesh, but we have this vector going from point A to B. There's just 2 points making up this line, and then we have this light blue area.
Moho 12 curver.
Indicating the area in which we can animate.
Okay.
And this is more demonstrated if we go past frame 0. You'll see that that mask or smart warp is cutting off the tail because it's outside the bounds of that blue rectangle.
Okay.
So that means when we set this up on frame 0, we want that blue rectangle to include the tail itself. And to make sure that this does wrap around the tail, let's add in some more points. Since this essentially is a vector line, we can come up and use the Add Point tool.
Okay, so I'm going to create a vector layer, rename it Tail Mesh. Maybe this will work better for something like a tail. Add points. So I've just hidden everything so that I can... I'll hide that side so that I can add the points to this mesh without being too worried about overlapping on something. Oops.
To add in more points. And in this case, we can add 2 more to help define this curve. So we'll add 1 here, and then add 1 right there. And then taking the Transform Points tool, we can come in and start to shape this to create the smart warp that we're looking for here. So if we come in, we can kind of come up, we can come up like this, grab the last point and move it up like so. So now the lines are mimicking the curve of the tail, but the rectangle is still cutting things off. So how do we deal with that? Well, we're going to come over here and grab the line width tool. And here, using the line width tool on each of these points, we can click and drag and go up and down with how we want to define this to create the look.
So I'm just gonna make my points go around here. I don't have a curver tool in this version of Moho. So we'll just keep going around here. Okay.
So perhaps something about like that. And we could also come in, you can see that this line work is slightly cut off. We could just bring that endpoint up a little bit more like so.
Create
So there you
shape.
go. You now have this area covering the entire tail. And if we go to frame 1, you can see that nothing is cut off and the artwork is intact. So let's go to frame 12, and we're just going to grab the Transform Points tool again and start to move these points that we added to the tail. So if we come in and start to move this around, you can see that we are creating a nice looking flowing effect. If I were to...
Okay. So I've made my mesh. Let's add some more points to it. Okay.
We're to grab the endpoint.
And then we're going to go in image, smart warp layer. Nope, not head mesh. Tail mesh. So draw, triangulate 2D mesh. I don't want that visible. Am I doing it? I have no clue. Let's go to frame. Image, tail mesh, okay. And it's not linked. Still. Transform points. There we go. So select that, transform the points. How do I rotate it? Press enter to weld. Hold shift to constrain. Alt to disable auto welding. There we go. So this might be useful for a tail. So we'll add a keyframe. Reset all layer channels. $36. Maybe.
And move it out like this, you can see it looks like it's stretching and almost cascading out from the origin point. And this is also non-destructive. As mentioned, it is a warp layer that is doing the work here. You can see it's right down here. So you're not actually affecting the tail layer, but the warp layer. So we could come in and you can see on frame 0, I've already added some animation up to 12. And you could keep going with this and just animate how you want. You can also animate out the line width. So if you want to create a more cartoony, bouncy effect, or you're just looking for something else to work with here, we can come in and let's grab that line width tool. And you can see now as I adjust the line width, we're able to create even a different effect. And this can be useful for correcting as well. As you can see right here, the way we have this set up, the line work doesn't really look that nice when it's bulging out like that. So we could kind of bring it down to make it more smoothed out and more natural looking. And you could just come in here and you can animate these things out, as you can see, just like that. You can adjust these using your Bezier handles as well. So if I click on the curvature tool and we come in here, you can see I have the ability to adjust the curvature. And this also allows us to work with how the lines are going to connect with the tail and all that. If we hold an Alt, we can also do one Bezier at a time, and that will also create some unique looking effects. It could also potentially break what you're doing here, so you just got to be careful when you're making your adjustments and keep an eye on things. And I think you'll be able to create some nice looking effects with this pretty easily. Now let's take a look at the compressible curver layer. I removed the warp layer that we were working with just now, and we have now the tail selected. I'm just going to go up to Draw, and then choose Create Compressible Curver Layer. Here, we're just going to add in our original one. Maybe grab the end here and start to move it. You'll notice that the tail isn't cascading out like it was before from the origin point, but it's more acting like what you would expect a more traditional mask or warp to act like. But it's acting more like a traditional warp would, where each point has its own movement and it's tied to the other point. So by going up like this, you can see that we're compressing it in
if you
based
really
on
want to use
the
smart warps
proximity
and
of this second point. So it's not
curves and
cascading, but you're
stuff.
able to come in here and adjust this basically however you want, versus having that more cascading effect occur with the regular curver tool. Now, let's just go ahead and we're going to remove that warp layer Go back to frame 0. And I'm just going to reapply now just the regular curve layer once again. We can see it's right there on frame 0. And we're going to make sure that no bones are currently selected. Although, once you have copper selected, we can go over here and let's just click on his head and then use the Add Bone tool. Holding in Shift, I can click and drag to create a bone like this.
Oh, a bone off to the side. Okay, so we're at head layer. Bone. Head is selected. Transform, manipulates, reparent, select bone. Oh, we gotta go back to 0. Select the head bone. So I've got the head bone selected. I'm gonna add a bone, add it off to the side right here.
Going over here to bone constraints, I'm just going to add in the angle constraints. And we're just going to do a very short example movement. Here, so I'm going to come in and let's bring this to 0. And then we have the second value set to 90. So we just have a 90-degree angle movement here we can create. So we're just going to close that. And with this bone still selected, I'm just going to name it tail. And then we can bring up the actions. So window, actions. With that bone selected, I can create a new action named tail and then click OK. So on frame 24, I'm just going to grab this bone and just bring it down like this. Now you'll notice as I'm doing this,
Okay, so that does impact the tail. Bone, select bone. Can I move it? Oops, I'm gonna take a break real quick. I've got to take the garbage out, but I will be back shortly to continue messing around with some animation stuff. Thanks for struggling with this through this with me, and I will be back shortly. Welcome back to the stream. It's me, Ghost. And we are back with some Moho animation. Let's see here. What was I doing? We were doing the tail. That's right. So I'm gonna lower this volume. Get our video back up here. So we're on video 11.
we have the tail moving along. And that's because we have bone strength currently set up for how this is being controlled. So that means I can go back here to frame 0 and just reduce the bone strength like this.
Let's go to frame 0. Reduce the bone strength.
So now you can see it's going to not affect the tail as it was. And let's say when we go to frame 24, we can go over here now to that warp layer. And we're just going to bring the tail down like so. Nothing too fancy, just kind of nice and level with the feet as much as we can here. So something like that. So now you have a bone that's going to lower the tail just like this. And if we come back here to the main line, let's just go to frame 12.
Oh, we're in the tail actions. Tail actions. So let's go to the tail mesh. Select it. Whoops. Select most of it. I'm gonna rotate and transform it.
12, go up to our bone layer. We can grab this bone now and we can move this up and down.
Bone layer. Move this up and down. Nope. Doesn't do. Wait, 12. Nope. Huh?
On his, and then we can bring up the actions. So window, actions. With that bone selected, I can create a new action named tail and then click OK. So on frame 24, I'm just going to grab this bone and just bring it down like this. Now you'll notice as I'm doing this, we have the tail moving along, and that's because we have bone strength currently set up for how this is being controlled. You can see it's going to not affect the tail as it was. And let's say when we go to frame 24, we can go over here now to that warp layer, and we're just going to bring the tail down like so. Nothing too fancy, just kind of nice and level with the feet as much as we can here. So something like that. So now you have a bone that's going to lower the tail just like this.
Okay.
And if we come back here to the main line, let's just go to frame 12, go up to our bone layer. We can grab this bone now and we can move this up and down. And this is a very simple example. Of course, you could have multiple bones controlling different aspects of the tail. This is just
I like doing the actions and the bones versus.
But hopefully that gives you an idea of how the curver can be a powerful asset to the Moho library. So again, if you're looking to create a unique effect, perhaps a bushy tail, a snake, a worm, a flowing piece of cloth, this is a great option to check out. So be sure to keep it in mind.
Basic smart bones.
Dive into smart bones a little bit more. At one point, I went in and created a smart action for the tail. And as you can see, when we move this dial up or down, we're able to control the tail. And that's what we're going to be exploring here. Just defining this a little bit more and showing you some more examples of how it can work. So first, let's go back to frame 0, and we're going to create a new bone to control the head. And we can attach this bone to the head bone, so that way if the character were to move anywhere, the controls will stay with him. So with the head bone selected, I'm going to grab the add bone tool, come in here, and I'll click and drag and just move this out horizontally like so, and release. I can name this one head up and down, or let's just say head U-D. That should work for our purposes. And then come over here to select bone and make sure we are showing the label. Next, I want to go to my bone constraints, choose angle constraints, and we're going to go negative 90
to go
and 90
on 0.
and then we can close it.
Select.
So we now want to assign the action so that when the bone moves down, the head, or the cheeks in this case, we'll just do the cheeks, will move down, and vice versa for when we move it up.
Head
so
up,
now, in order to get
down.
this started, we need to create an action for this bone. So with the bone selected, we can come over here to the Actions panel, click on New Action, and make sure that the action name is the same as Head UD, and then click OK. Now, when you set up your actions, it's always best to have more frames than you need. In the event you were to animate this bone, let's say across 120 frames or even 96, if you only had, let's say, 12 frames of animation in this action, and you had 48 frames that you needed to animate with this bone, you're going to find that the animation could end up looking choppy. So, when you're setting up your actions, it's always best to have more frames than you need. In this case, we're going to go to frame 96, and that's going to be the duration for each of our smart bones. So I'm going to grab these frames and just bring it over like so, and you can see now we have 96 frames of animation for this bone. So with the bone selected, frames that you needed to animate with this bone, you're going to find that the animation could end up looking choppy. So when you're setting up your actions, it's always best to have more frames than you need. In this case, we're going to go to frame 96, and that's going to be the duration for each of our smart bones. So I'm going to grab these frames and just bring it over like so, and you can see now we have 96 frames of animation for this particular action we're building. Now, one more thing. Best to have more frames than you need. In this case, we're going to go to frame 96, and that's going to be the duration for each of our smart bones. So I'm going to grab these frames and just bring it over like so, and you can see now we have 96 frames of animation for this particular action we're building. Now, one more thing before we continue, you'll notice that the bone, due to bone strength, is bringing the warp layers along with it, and we don't want that. So going back here to frame 0, I'm going to grab the bone strength tool.
I'm going to delete this stuff. Head mesh. Let's hide that. I don't know why it's doing that. Anyway, let's select this bone. Bone strength 0.
And just click and drag to the left to reduce the strength. So now we have this going on and we don't have any interference with the other layers. So
let's go back to select bone, bone constraints, angle constraints. We want it -90 and 90 degrees. Close that. We need this deleted. So 96. We're gonna, oops. Okay, bone layer. Select head. Let's delete this animation. What's going on key 1? I don't know. But we're adding a bone. Head. Up, down. Show label. Bone constraints. Close. That's not what I want it to do. Manipulate bone. Yeah.
We don't have any interference with the, and just click and drag to the left to read the bone strength tool.
Wait, so we created the bone. And we want to assign the action.
We now want to assign the action so that when the bone moves down, the head or the cheeks in this case, we'll just do the cheeks, will move down, and vice versa for when we move it up. So now, in order to get this started, we need to create an action for this bone. So with the bone selected, we can come over here to the Actions panel, click on New Action, and make sure that the action name is the same as Head UD, and then click OK. Now, when you set up your actions, it's always best to have more frames than you need.
Okay.
In the event you were to animate this bone, let's say across 120 frames or even 96, if you only had, let's say, 12 frames of animation in this action, and you had 48 frames that you needed to animate with this bone, you're going to find that the animation could, and you can see now we have the tool, and then find the head warp. So with this moving down now, let's go back to frame 1 and then find the head warp layer. You can use Control or Command F to lock down your frames. Now let's go to,
what do I do?
with this moving down now, let's go back to frame 1 and then find the head warp layer. You can use Control or Command F to lock down your frames. Now let's go to frame 96, and with this move down, we're going to move the cheeks down with it. So I'll grab the magnet tool, click and drag, and I'm just going to move some things down like so. Again, we could go into much detail with creating a head, perhaps looking up and down, but in this case, I'm just going to do some very minor work, just enough to get us a visual representation of what can happen here. So now we have the head going up like this and down like so. Now I want to create a second action that's going to do the opposite of this. So we have this now, the bone's going down and we have the head going down. We now want to create a second action for this. So what I'm going to do is just come over here and jump outside to mainline, making sure that you have the bone layer selected along with the head up and down bone. We're going to create a new action, and this time it's going to be called Head Up and Down 2, and then we can click OK. And we're going to do the same thing that we did before. You may recall, if I go to the first one, it goes down. So now for the second one, we want it to go up. So at frame 96, we can just bring it all the way up like that. And then for your head warp, we're just going to come in and we can bring some things up. There we go. So now it's going up just like that. Now if we come back here to the main line and we go to frame 24, we can make sure we're on the bone layer and start animating some things out. So if we go down, you can see it goes down. If we go up, it goes up. And again, it's not the best looking animation. I would have to spend more time molding this and creating a pleasing result. But given the tutorial nature of this, and I want to show you as fast as I can, this is what we have. But hopefully that makes some sense as to how you can set this up. One thing you don't want to do is put both of these actions in one action. So as an example, you might be tempted to create a neutral position for when it's horizontal, and then in one action have it go down and then up. And you don't want to do that. That can create issues with how Moho functions with these bones. So in this case, if you want one bone to have two directions, it's always best to make sure you have two actions assigned to one bone. You could also separate the bones out. You could have one bone go for up and one bone go for down. It just depends on how you want to set it up. And finally, here's another example of how we can use these bones. Go back here to frame 0. I'm on the bone layer, and now I want to create a new bone. I'm just going to hold and shift and draw it up. And I'm going to name this one Blink. And we can show the label.
Which one is that attached to? The head layer as well?
Bone. I'm just going to hold and shift and draw it up. And I'm going to name this one blink. And we can show the label. Let's go to our bone constraints. And we're going to shore this up to, let's say, -30 and 30. And then we can close this. Now, I want to make sure I have my actions, and we're going to click on the new action and make sure it's named blink, and then click OK and go inside. And we're just going to quickly make this control the switch layer. So coming in, I'm just going to grab this and move it over to the left. And then on frame 24, we can move it over to the right. And in this case, we don't really need that many frames given it's a switch layer. So it's just going to pop to the next layer. So there's no real reason to have a bunch of animation in this particular action.
Let's go back a little bit on that, because the switch layers is what I'm interested in.
I'm just going to hold and shift and draw it up. And I'm going to name this one blink. And we can show the label. Let's go to our bone constraints. And we're going to shore this up to, let's say, -30 and 30. And then we can close this. Now, I want to make sure I have my actions, and we're going to click on the new action and make sure it's named blink, and then click OK and go inside. And we're just going to quickly make this control the switch layer. So coming in, I'm just going to grab this and move it over to the left. And then on frame 24, we can move it over to the right. And in this case, we don't really need that many frames given it's a switch layer. So it's just going to pop to the next layer. So there's no real reason to have a bunch of animation in this particular action. So we're just going to leave it like that. And then when the bone is perhaps all the way over to the left, we can come over here to, for instance, the eyes, and choose to have these open. And then when the blink bone is in the middle, we can come in and choose to have, let's say, blink down. And then when it's all the way to the end, perhaps it's at blink up. So now if I go back here to mainline, and then when the... So there's no real reason to have a bunch of animation in this particular action.
Oh, I don't have the switch layer set up for the eyes.
We're just going to leave it like that.
Oops.
And then when the bone is perhaps all the way over to the left, we can come over here to, for instance, the eyes, and choose to have these open. And then when the blink bone is in the middle, we can come in and choose to have, let's say, blink down. And then when it's all the way to the end, perhaps it's at blink up. So now if I go back here to mainline and go into the bone layer, and let's just go to any frame past 0, you can see I can come in and alter that. And of course, let's make sure we also have the bone strength turned down for this, so we're not altering the warp layers like we were just a moment ago. So come in here now, and you can see here we can adjust the blinks very easily, and we can also independently move this up and down, and everything is looking pretty good. Good enough for this tutorial. Again, if I wanted to go in and do more head animation, I would spend more time with this, but just some final notes. When creating your actions, make sure you leave plenty of frames. 96 frames is a good number.
Okay.
When you want to create, let's say, a head turn or an action that has 2 different actions in it, it's best to separate them out. So don't create one action, create 2 actions that will do the left and right, up and down, or whatever the case is with your rig. So with that, hopefully you have a little bit of understanding of how you can create smart actions inside of Moho. This video, we are in Moho working off of the copper rig once again. And here we're going to take a moment to discuss how animation channels are recorded on the timeline. We touched on this briefly in a couple of videos as we were setting up the rig. However, let's be a little bit more explicit now with how these animation channels work and what to watch out for as you start to rig and animate. I'm currently on the bone layer, and what I want to do is come down here to the timeline, and we're just going to jump to, let's say, frame 12. Now that we're outside of frame 0, let's start by animating some bones. I'm going to come over here and grab the Manipulate Bone tool and just come in and start to move this arm. You'll notice on the timeline, we now have a new channel recorded with keyframes.
Why is
Right here
this
is the
based off
bone
of
angle channel,
bone strength
meaning
again?
that the bone angle is being animated on the timeline. More specifically, the red bone, which is the forearm right here, is also being recorded. And we talked a little bit about how the red and white channels work differently in a previous video. But anytime you decide to make a change using a different tool, you will record different channels of animation. So if I were to come over here to the eyelids and click on that, you can see that we already have some keyframes in place for this. And if we were to hover over with our mouse, we can see that this is the switch layer and we have keys enabled for it. Now, if I were to click on the eyelids and then hold down the control key or command if you're on Mac and click on the bone layer, you can see now we have the ability to highlight both the bone layer and the switch on the timeline at the same time. And you'll see here that copper.psd is being labeled, and then right down here are eyelids, but at the same time, we can see the two different channels, the switch channel and the bone angle channel, on the timeline at the same time, allowing us to go through and edit both of these at once if we wish. But more importantly, as you can see, depending on what you're animating here, you will have different channels appearing. So if we come over here to the head warp, and we're just going to grab a transform point tool here and click and drag anywhere on these points, you can see now we have a point motion channel being recorded. And once again, if we wanted to select all these different layers, you can see now
so they're talking about all these
bone
channels
angle,
down here.
point motion, and then switch layer. And as you continue to move along with animating and rigging inside of Moho, you'll find that all sorts of different channels can be created. And we could even do one more if we wanted to. So with copper selected, I could grab the transform layer tool here, and we could come in and let's just move the character with that layer tool. You can see now we have layer translation right down there. If we were to come in now and resize this, you can see even though we're using the same tool, we have a layer scale channel appear. And we also can rotate with this tool,
Yeah, so a lot of
allowing us to create a layer Z rotation channel as well. And because we're working on this one layer, you can also see we have the bone channel here. And like before, if we were to come in and just select different layers, you can see we have all sorts of different channels here appearing, indicating the different animations we've put on the timeline. So this makes organization easier, it can make animating quicker, and in the end, it's overall a good idea to get used to what the icons mean, so that way at a glance you can see, oh yeah, there is a layer translation here, or my bone angles are being animated.
Okay. So that'll tell you what's actually going on in case there's just so much that you miss. Let's see. Keyframe types and graph mode.
A smart action for
Keyframe types and graph mode.
For this video, we are back in Moho, and we have Copper opened up to test out the motion graph, as well as other keyframe types. So, just to review, as we go through the process of animating on the channels timeline, let's just go to frame 24, and I'm going to use the transform layer tool right here, and come in and just move the character. So I can click and drag, and let's move the character over to the left, and release. You can see here that will create a keyframe on the timeline, and we've dealt with that before. It's essentially a change on the timeline, and we can come in here and see that change take place. But what happens if we add some different dimensions to this? Sure, we're moving it to the left right now, and we're using mostly the X property to do so. But if I were to raise this up or down, we really get no indication that it is going up, down, or even to the left with this keyframe. It's just indicating a change, and that's it. So if you want to refine your movements further, you have the ability to break down the dimensions of each keyframe and alter them on the motion graph. So to do so, let's come over here to the timeline and locate the motion graph. It's going to be the third option next to these graphics. So motion graph, let's go ahead and click on that. When you enter graph mode, whichever channel you have selected will be the one represented on the graph. To help illustrate this, I'm going to come over here with my layer translation tool and just rotate the character a little bit. And you can see now on the graph timeline, we have added a rotation channel. However, we cannot access this channel. We're only seeing the layer translation channel right now. If you come down here and click once on the layer Z rotation channel, you'll see now we have previews of the different motions occurring with each channel. However, to actually go in and then edit the channel, you'll need to double click on whichever channel you wish to work on. So in this case, if we double click on layer translation, you can see we have some keyframes that pop up, and we're now allowed to go in and alter these as we see fit. And we'll talk more about what these lines represent here in a moment. But here, if you wanted to then switch over and edit the layer rotation channel, you can't just simply click once. That'll remove the preview. You'll need to come in here and double click on it, and now you'll be able to come in here and work with those keyframes with that rotation channel. And finally, when you are in graph mode, just like the channel timeline, you're able to go to any point on the timeline, let's say frame 18 here, and I can double click to add keys, and then I can go in and alter those. And again, we'll be talking more about that here as this video continues. But I just wanted you to know that this is how you can access those channels once you go to graph mode. So here, let's just come back to the channels, and I'm just going to remove the rotation for right now. So that way we have something a little bit more simplified to look at. Now, right off the bat, you're going to see some different things here, and I can zoom in and out here just to kind of demonstrate this. You'll see that we have this pink line that's sort of expanding out and then up and down. And it doesn't give us much information beyond that. If I come in here, still on that key, and I click and drag and let's say move him down this way, you can see that there is a change that occurs with these dimensions. But still, it's hard to tell exactly what this is showing us. So one thing we can do is come over here to the layer translation channel, right click, and then choose to separate dimensions. Here, you'll see the channels have been broken up, and we now get a better visual representation of what's going on here. X, Y, and Z are all accounted for and color-coded. So as you can see, because we moved the character up a little bit, the green or Y graph has changed to look like it's going up. And if I were to come in here and just move this a little bit more, you can see that change playing out in real time. And if I came in here to, let's say, the Z properties, and I push this into the background, you can see that the Z graph is being changed. So we have the ability to break this down and look at exactly what this is doing. Now you may notice as we click on certain dimensions and work with this, we have the ability to alter keyframes. Here we have the green dimension, that is the up and down Y dimensions selected. And if I were to grab this keyframe and move it up and down, you can see that we have the ability to move it up and down just like we did when animating it with the layer transform property. Now, if we bring it out more, this is going to just extend the duration of this. So instead of going up in 1 second, we can have it go up in 2 seconds. And you can see how the graph accommodates for that and creates a more natural bend extending all the way to 2 seconds. And you can continue to build up other keyframes with this. So if I went back to, let's say, frame 18,
double click to add a keyframe,
and I grab this and move it, you can see I am creating a third keyframe for this. Go over here, and now we have another keyframe. And you can see how this motion is going to play out just based on adjusting those keyframes. What's more with the motion graph is you can adjust your points as Beziers, making the curves even more refined. So as an example, I'm just going to come in here, making sure I can select all these keys. So I'll just select these 3 keys just by clicking and dragging. And then you have 2 options for adjusting your keys. You can come over here to this drop-down menu where it says smooth, because these keys are currently set to smooth. And you could choose, in this case, Bezier from the list. And you can also, if you want, right-click on a key and then choose to set it up that way if you wish as well. And what I did here was create Beziers. So now you can see that we have these little handles that we can adjust to create more refined curves if that's something that we need. So here you can see now we've created more of a wavy effect for when he's going up and down, almost creating a nice little bounce. So you can just come in here and you can keep adjusting. As you can see, I can do some pretty crazy things with this, and you're able to go in and make those adjustments. Now, before we end this video, let's look at some other keyframe types. First, I'm just going to come in here and remove these keys. But before I do that, let me also point out, you do have the ability to come over here and consolidate your layer channels back if you wish. So you can see we can just go in and do that, and we can toggle it off. So once you're done with this, if you no longer want all this on screen, you can do so. You can also right-click here on any of these channels and choose to rejoin the dimensions. And you can see here, it'll bring it back to the pink outline.
Wait, what?
So once you're done with this, if you no longer want all this on screen, you can do so. You can also right-click here on any of these channels and choose to rejoin the dimensions. And you can see here, it'll bring it back to the pink outline. So I'm just going to come in and remove these keys for right now. And let's rejoin the dimensions. Now I'll go back to my channels timeline here and just remove any keys. So now we're back at default. I'm just going to come over here and maybe shrink the character down a little bit on frame 1 and bring him to the right. And then on frame 24, he can go over here to the left. So it's just going to look like this. Now, let me actually put this out to about 33 so we have a little bit more time. There we go. Now, we can continue to adjust keyframes as I alluded to. So if we wanted to make it so the movement isn't smooth, because that's what it's currently set to, it has this nice little smooth effect to it. You could right-click or click on the key that you want to alter and come over here to your drop-down menu, and we can choose linear in this case. You'll notice that the keyframe changes its icon to indicate what kind of key it is. And it might be kind of hard to tell, but now it's maintaining its speed consistently all the way throughout the animation. Set to it. We're back at default. I'm just going to come over here more time. There we go. Now, we can continue to adjust keyframes as I alluded to. So if we wanted to make it so the movement isn't smooth, because that's what it's currently set to, it has this nice little smooth effect to it. You could right-click or click on the key that you want to alter and come over here to your drop-down menu, and we can choose linear in this case. You'll notice that the keyframe changes its icon to indicate what kind of key it is. And it might be kind of hard to tell, but now it's maintaining its speed consistently all the way throughout the animation.
Okay.
Now, another way to tell this too is to come in and use the motion graph itself. So you can see here, we're able to track this movement. And actually, let me come in here and just separate out the dimensions again so it's even more explicit. You can see that the X property has this very nice steep decline going all the way down. There's no curvature to indicate any changes to that motion. However, if we were to take these dimensions and let's do bounce. Now we have that new icon. If I come over here to the graph, you can definitely see what this is doing to that X property. And definitely we can see it visually too, that once it hits the end, it bounces back and forth until it reaches a point where it's no longer bouncing. And this is just a very basic example of how you can adjust these motions with the motion graph. Of course, as you start to animate your own characters, get into your own scenes, I bet you'll find different ways to tweak the animation just right, so that way it's pleasing to your eye and it's exactly how you want it to be. So be sure to keep that motion graph in mind, as well as the other keyframe types, as that can help you save time and refine enough to get something pleasing for the eye. We're now going to talk about the differences between relative and absolute cycles. Inside of Moho, you can isolate specific groups of bones, of objects, layers, and have them cycle, that is, repeat their animation over and over until you tell them otherwise. And this can be great to speed up different processes when you're animating out your rigs. And in this case, we're going to be using the tail as an example. So here, the tail is connected with 3 bones, and these bones are linked using this warp right here. So we have these bones set up, and the warp layer is going to be the one that facilitates the animation for that. And here, we're just
I'm getting pretty tired, and it is getting pretty dark. So I'm going to continue doing this on my own, and maybe play some Baldur's Gate 3 later on my own as well. But I just wanted to get some more art videos out there since I didn't do any for July. Next week I'll probably play maybe Planet Zoo or some more 2 Point Museum. I'm not sure yet. I've been wanting to record some videos as well, but I haven't really gotten around to it. I've been enjoying myself with animation and trying to get the will to practice my ASL again. I was really good on that for about a month and a half, and then it just fell off, so I want habits to be more than just short sprints, and I'm gonna keep going with this. So thank you for joining me, or thank you for watching back on this VOD later. Leave a comment with what you would like to see me draw and animate. Something simple like eye blinking or mouth moving. Maybe a slight head turn. I don't know. I'll think of what I want to do and which character I want to draw. Maybe I'll draw my Baldur's Gate 3 character, Omar. We'll see. So, thank you as always. Thank you to my Patreon members. They help support me and are helping me save up for my cat Nala's cardiology appointment. You can also check out that GoFundMe link that I had posted up there. It's not a click-through link, so you'll have to type in the numbers. But thank you again. Have a great rest of your evening, and I will see you on Sunday for another art stream. Have a good one.